Welcome to our module on harvesting and storage of forages.
This module was authored by Craig Schaefer, Christine Moncada, and Constance Carlson of the University of Minnesota in 2017 and updated in 2026. Narrated by Constance Carlson, with additional narration generated using the AI voice of Hannah from 11 Labs.
Making hay for storage and later feeding and for sale is an important, yet challenging activity. Haymaking has been practiced by farmers for centuries in northern regions where grazing by livestock was impossible during winter months. Without hay feeding, livestock growth and milk production would suffer, and sometimes livestock would not survive. Before development of equipment for harvesting hay, it was an exhausting, labor-intensive activity involving many workers.
On this slide, we show two farmers on top of a hay wagon piled with hay being pulled by two horses.
Let's start by describing what hay is and some goals of haymaking.
We will discuss cutting and drying, raking, baling, transporting, storage, and finally moisture content of hay.
By definition, hay is grass and legume forage that is harvested and stored in the air. It contrasts with silage that is stored in a specialized structure without air called a silo. To allow for storage in the air without molding, hay must be dried to a moisture content of less than 20%. Most often, hay is dried in the field using the sun's energy for drying. After drying, hay is picked up and put into a package called a bale. The goals of haymaking are to minimize field and storage losses. Because of the need to achieve the target moisture in the forage and dependence on the weather, making good quality hay is challenging. It is typically not possible to save all the forage yield and forage quality that is produced in the field, but producers should still attempt to minimize losses.
This image shows a field with windrows of alfalfa hay that has been rained on, which has led to a loss of hay quality and yield.
This is a visual example of leaf loss due to shattering during baling of hay. It is likely because the hay has been baled too dry.
Shown is an older model of a hay baler making rectangular hay bales that are shedding excess shattered leaf material en route to the hay wagon.
Here are the steps in haymaking. They include cutting the standing forage, drying the forage in the field, turning the cut forage to facilitate drying, packaging of the dried forage using a baler, transporting the baled hay, and finally storage. The first step in haymaking is to cut the standing forage. Here an alfalfa field is being cut with a mower conditioner. A mower conditioner not only cuts the forage but has rollers or knives that cut or lacerate the stems to increase the drying rate of the forage. Cut hay is often placed in windrows for drying. Windrows will dry on the top but will need to be raked so the underside will dry too.
Here again we show a tractor with a mower conditioner cutting and windrowing a field of hay.
Research has shown that to facilitate drying, it is better to deposit hay in a wide swath for drying, and not into a tight windrow as shown in the previous slide. The wide swath exposes more of the cut forage to the sun's energy and to the wind. After the top of the hay is dry, the swath of hay can be raked into a windrow for baling.
Here, a hay field is being cut and swathed into rows that are at least 10 feet wide.
Before we continue with the discussion of haymaking, it is important to describe the hay drying process. Making good quality hay is all about managing the hay moisture content. Standing grass and legume forage can contain as much as 80% moisture, and the goal is to rapidly dehydrate the cut forage to less than 20% moisture. Hay made at greater than 20% moisture will mold, and we will talk about that later. Forage drying is dependent on the sun's energy and wind, and it typically takes 2 to 4 days of field drying to achieve proper moisture levels for storage. Drying times are shorter if the hay mass is less dense, if the soil is drier, and if there is low humidity and wind. Of course, rain during haymaking can prevent drying and can actually re-wet partially dried hay. Hence that expression, make hay while the sun shines. The next step in haymaking is raking the hay. Raking is necessary to complete the drying process for the underside of the cut forage. Raking deposits the cut forage into a windrow that can be picked up by the baler. There are different types of rakes. Here is a wheel rake that is driven by contact with the soil. Hay that is raked with a wheel rake often has more soil contamination and leaf loss than hay made with a side delivery rake or other types of hay rakes.
Here is a tractor with a hay rake with yellow tined wheels in a grassy field.
Here is another type of rake called a sidebar or side delivery rake.
Here we show a sidebar rake attached to a tractor in a field with hay windrows in the background.
And finally, a rotary rake.
Here is a small tractor pulling a rotary hay rake in a field. It has multiple arms that rotate.
Here is a windrow inverter.
In this picture of a windrow inverter, we show the conveyor belt that helps move the windrows in the process of flipping the hay.
It replaces traditional rakes as it picks up and moves the hay. It results in less leaf loss and soil contamination than wheel or side delivery rakes. The next step in haymaking is picking up and packaging the hay. For larger balers, rakes merge hay from 2 windrows together. Raking can result in significant loss of dried forage leaves. Therefore, it should be done when the hay is only partially dry. In the old days, harvesting hay was a very labor-intensive effort.
Here is an old picture demonstrating the process from those days. Several teams of horses and numerous people were needed for harvest. The large pile of hay is likely about 15 feet tall, and a hay loader is being used to reach the top.
Hay was picked up by hand, or in this case with the hay loader. The men on the wagon distributed the hay over the surface of the wagon. When the hay and its wagon got to the barn, it had to be lifted into the haymow at the top of the barn using ropes and pulleys. Horses on the ground were used to provide the power for lifting.
Here is a hay wagon up against a barn with the pulleys being used to lift the hay.
Here's a little later time with a hay lifter that is creating a stack of hay.
This picture shows the tall scaffold of a hay lifter in the field being used to pile hay.
Today, all hay is baled or packaged in the field. Baling makes pickup, transportation, and storage easier. Baling also reduces labor needs. There are different types and sizes of bales available.
The bale types and their weights are as follows. Small squares are 40 to 100 pounds. Medium squares are 450 to 800 pounds. Large squares are 800 to 1,000 pounds. Medium to large rounds are 550 to 2,000 pounds.
The first bales were small rectangular and round bales. Today, larger square and round bales that must be handled by machinery are used. Hay in rectangular bales is bound by twine or wire, while large round bales are bundled by twine or plastic net wrapping.
We show 2 pictures. In the first are some small and large rectangular bales. In the second image, there is a large round bale with a close-up of the plastic net wrapping on the outside of the bale.
Here is an older square baler harvesting a grass hay. This baler required a farmer on the wagon to pick up and stack the hay bales that likely weigh close to 70 pounds.
In this image, a man on the hay wagon is about to pick up the small rectangular bales to add to the pile of bales already on the wagon.
A bale thrower eliminates the need for a laborer in the hay wagon. These small square bales are typically 40 to 50 pounds in weight.
Hay in the field is shown being baled, and a small rectangular bale is being thrown by the equipment onto a wagon.
Here is a large square baler. The advantage of larger machinery is faster harvest from the field and mechanization of pickup and transportation.
Shown on this slide is a hay baler carrying a large square bale in a hayfield.
Large round bales are another type of packaging.
On this slide, we show a tractor with a baler in a field baling windrows.
Here, a baler is picking up alfalfa hay from a windrow. These round bales usually weigh from 800 to 1,000 pounds. Unfortunately, that dust is from hay leaves that have been powdered by the baler. Here is a completed round bale being deposited in the field.
The picture shows a tractor with baler about to set down a large round bale onto the field.
The next step is transporting of hay from the field to storage. Sometimes bales are left in the field, but that is not a best management practice. Transportation methods depend on the availability of equipment. Here, large round bales are being picked up following baling, and then will be placed on a hay wagon.
This slide shows a mown field with a skid steer loader with an attachment lifting two large round hay bales.
Large round bales being transported to a storage site.
In this image, a pickup is preparing to haul one of two trailers that are loaded with numerous large round hay bales.
Similarly, large rectangular bale handling and transportation has been mechanized. Large rectangular bales can be efficiently stacked and consolidated on trailers for transportation.
On this slide, we show a semi-trailer being loaded with large rectangular bales in a field.
The goal in storage is to minimize quality loss. To minimize loss during storage, bales should be stored inside or under cover. Bales that are left outside in the field and in contact with the soil quickly deteriorate because when rewetting occurs, mold develops.
This image shows an alfalfa field where several rectangular hay bales are decomposing.
Here are some round bales left in the field. Round bales keep better outside than square bales, but we can expect a 50% loss in quality within a year.
The picture shows a grassy field with dozens of large round hay bales scattered throughout.
Notice the round bales that have been stored outside over winter without cover and how the snow has collected.
Shown is a field with several piles of hay bales in winter. Snow covers the field and parts of the hay piles.
Let's see what happened to the bales by the following spring. The round bales in the foreground that were a bottom row in contact with the ground have partially decomposed. The large square bales in the background have also deteriorated and have begun to sag. Here is one way to keep your round bales from getting wet, at least the top layer. Lesson from this image? Store your bales in a well-drained spot.
In this picture is a row of large round bales that had been double stacked and are now surrounded by water. The top layer of bales are protected from the flooding, but the bottom row touches the water.
Round bales that are stored outside should be kept off the ground on pallets or gravel so that they cannot wick up moisture from the soil.
Here we show 3 large round bales stored on a long pallet so they are not directly touching the ground.
Also note how these bales do not touch each other to provide a contact point for moisture collection. Note that the bale on the left is covered with a plastic wrap applied at the baler. This is a commercial product called B-Wrap. Here is another outside storage situation.
This image shows a large stack of smaller rectangular bales covered with a plastic tarp.
The plastic cover will protect the top of the hay pile, but water can still be absorbed from the exposed sides. The white row is small square bales that are covered with plastic. Plastic covering is becoming a more common practice and is a way to protect the baled hay.
In this image, large round hay bales are being completely enveloped in white plastic by machinery.
Here is plastic wrapping of large round bales. The plastic wrapping excludes all the air and creates an airtight anaerobic situation. Providing the plastic remains intact, these bales can be permanently preserved. We have now reviewed the steps in haymaking. They include cutting the standing forage, drying the forage in the field, turning the cut forage to facilitate drying, packaging of the dried forage using a baler, transporting the baled hay, and storage. But before we leave the topic of haymaking, we need to say a few words about how to determine hay moisture. For haymaking, moisture content is a very critical factor because if hay is made too wet, we can expect prolonged respiration by the hay and then mold growth. The nutrients in hay are a growth media for bacteria and especially fungi. If hay is baled at a moisture content greater than 20%, there is a risk of fungi or mold growth. Typically, as moisture content increases, so does the mold growth. In contrast, if hay is baled too dry, there is a greater risk of leaf shatter and loss.
At less than 15%, leaf shattering will result in excess field loss. Shown in this picture is a close-up of decomposing, moldy hay.
Ugh! Here is some moldy alfalfa hay that was made at about 25% moisture. Molding deteriorates hay nutritive value, reduces dry mass, and can lead to spontaneous combustion. Farmers who work around moldy hay can develop a condition called farmer's lung. The moldy hay can lead to respiratory problems in livestock and cause colic in horses.
Here we show another close-up of hay that is almost entirely blackened.
This is some alfalfa hay that has undergone extreme heating and turned black. Fortunately, it did not spontaneously combust. Farmers know the necessity of making hay at the correct moisture content, but often hay is made at moisture levels leading to the aforementioned problems. Here are 3 reasons. The first is the measurement technique or how they are determining the moisture content. The second is variation within a field. Fields do not typically uniformly dry. And third, there is a fear of rain. If hay is almost dry and there is a threat of rain, farmers will often take the risk and package the hay. Farmers determine hay moisture using 3 approaches. These include a very subjective approach that includes feeling the forage, smelling it, or twisting stems to see if moisture is extruded.
This picture shows a person using their hands to squeeze cut hay in a field.
If moisture is extruded, then many feel it's too wet to bale. Unfortunately, these subjective methods are prone to inaccuracy. A better approach is using electronic methods that measure the flow of electricity through the forage, with more moisture providing more flow. Moisture testing equipment can be found and purchased through the internet. In this unit, we have reviewed haymaking and its challenges. In summary, these challenges revolve around management of the moisture content of the crop. Like all of agriculture, haymaking is dependent on the weather, and farmers who make hay need to plan ahead to make hay while the sun shines. We've reached the conclusion of our module. Thanks for watching.
This project is supported by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, Organic Transitions Program under Award Number 2013-5, 1106-2-1005. This project is supported by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Agricultural Marketing Service, National Organic Program under the Transition to Organic Partnership Program, TOPP, in the Midwest region. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this publication are those of the authors and should not be construed to represent any official USDA or U.S. government determination or policy. The University of Minnesota shall provide equal access to and opportunity in its programs, facilities, and employment without regard to race, color, creed, religion, national origin, gender, age, marital status, familial status, disability, public assistance status, membership or activity in a local commission created for the purpose of dealing with discrimination, veteran status, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. For more information about this project, please see organicag.umn.edu, copyright 2026, Regents of the University of Minnesota. All rights reserved.